right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. That's it. That's the secret. The guy well told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. Shit, motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all deep. Everybody. My God. Ex-Asians, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets me. Yo, Wendy's done told you. Dollar Claus done told you. Everybody done told you. It's crazy.
All right, let's do a audio check. Let me know if y'all can hear me. Hold on. Yep, we here. All right, word. All right. Let's get this cracking. Gonna some people join the room. Got some questions to answer already. Basically, I want to make this a little more motivational, a continuation of talking about why crypto, right? Why do we do the things that we do? And answer some questions, right? Help people understand whatever they don't understand, because that's important nowadays. So let's get the ball rolling. If you got questions, I got a tweet I sent out earlier. I'll retweet it right now so you guys can throw your questions in there or in the tweet where I sent out the link for the space. Either or works. Just, pick one. I'll be looking for both. So if you haven't heard the spaces I did, what was it, the 2nd of August, I'll retweet that link also. Highly recommend everybody hear that one, because that is really going to give you a very solid foundation as far as the education goes. And all you got to do is hear it a bunch of times and you're going to know what you're talking about, because everything in there is factual. You can go look up the information and verify it. That's important, because at the end of the day, what we're doing hasn't really been done before. And I think that's important to understand. Tweeting out that last spaces now. The first one. And, everybody wants to get rich off crypto. So I think it's imperative that you understand what crypto is, why crypto exists, and all these, the 5 W's of crypto is basically what the first spaces is. And the reason I went that route is because it needed to be very foundational. The layman needs to come in and be able to understand what's going on. And I think, given how the cost of living is going up every day, and it's crazy that I literally mean every day, because this is, home of the reserve currency. And what that means is that that's not supposed to be happening here. This economy is supposed to be the economy that tees it up for everybody else to live good. That's the story. That's what they pitch internationally. And by they, I mean the people that manage the domestic economy if you live in the United States or in the Western world, period, right? But the interesting thing is that even within the West, right, there's layers, there's levels. And just like with anything, right? There's different levels to everything. So just like you see, certain countries benefiting off of their natural resources, and you don't see other countries benefiting off their natural resources, think Saudi Arabia, think Africa, right? Respectively. One benefits from its natural resources while the other does not. And, Africa is a freaking continent, but I mention it as a whole because that's basically what's going on. So, that's something for you to think about as the individual, because if you live in the West, you got to benefit from that reality. A lot of people don't know where anything comes from. They just buy it, and that's it, because they, presume that they need it. There's a lot of information available out there for how things operate and how things work. And, I think the biggest scam you're going to find as far as the internet age goes is this notion that you don't have to know the fine details of how things operate or how they work. And while that may be true, because we all drive cars without knowing anything about them, not all of us, but a lot of us, this is early enough in crypto that it behooves you to actually know and learn exactly what's going on. And the reason for that is because, I don't know about you, but I don't like walking through minefields. Right? That's something for you guys to think about. Walking through a minefield is a dangerous topic, or is a dangerous suspect, a dangerous endeavor, right? It's nothing to talk about. It's dumb. Like, it's not even a topic. It's really dumb. So the sad part is that when you have individuals that find out about crypto, they don't really understand how to think about it. First of all, there's no real valid information available to them that'll help them understand how they need to be thinking about what's going on over here. Because at the end of the day, this is all new. This is not old stuff. Did I mute somebody? Hold on, guys. I think I might have pressed a button I wasn't supposed to or something. I don't know what the hell I pressed, but I'm going to keep clicking around down here until I figure it out. So let me continue. So, it's important to understand that when you're walking into new territory, you don't understand where the dangers are at all. That's imperative to know. It's what you don't know that gets you, right? Always the case. This is always what you're going to be. That's always what's true, right? There's never been a time that people get blindsided by what they saw coming. I mean, it's called blindsided for a reason, right? And I think that there's so much misinformation out there and so much momentum around that misinformation that the people that come to the table with the correct information, they get called haters or, grumpy or whatever nonsense, the scammers want to throw out there. Because at the end of the day, if you're not following the true tenets of crypto, well, you scamming. I don't give a fuck what you're thinking. I don't give a fuck what your excuse is. Whatever it is. If you're not following the facts, well, you making it up. And you ain't doing what you're supposed to be doing. Right? You literally, and this is from a regulatory aspect, because this is what's difficult for people to wrap their heads around when it comes to crypto. There is no regulatory body here. We regulate it ourselves. And how do we regulate it ourselves? Well, interesting question. The way we regulate this thing that has no regulator is by doing it ourselves. Now, how the hell do we do that? Well, it's very simple. People have to have the correct information to understand why they're even here in the first place. Because, again, why do we care about cryptocurrency when there's already fiat money currency to use? Why do we care? We literally do not have to. We don't. There's other forms, other mediums of transfer of value, right? Hell, we could all sit back on our pretty hands and fucking wait on CBDCs like some chumps. We don't have to do this crypto thing. So why would you come in here and play yourself by pretending that you don't have to learn the most basic elements of what's going on when the alternative is epic failure? That's something for you to consider if you're new and you think you don't have to learn anything. You know, you're lying to yourself. The reason the world is in the current state that it's in is because of that frame of thought. Fact, not opinion. So, what are you going to do to not only set yourself up for success, but lay the path down for others to follow behind you? Because this is the ground floor. There is no regulatory body here. There's never going to be. There can't be. That defeats the entire purpose of this endeavor and what we're doing here. It's about being a responsible, sovereign individual. And if you cannot be responsible and sovereign, then we will individually kick your ass out of here. It's not a problem. It's very simple. It's not a threat. It's just how it has to be. Because how are we going to find the freedom, the peace of mind that we want and desire, all the elements that we deem a successful life, a fruitful life, if we just decide to let schmucks fuck it up just because they feel like it? And I mean, hey, if that's your speed, no worries. No problem. But don't get in the way of those that don't sit back and tacitly approve the bullshit, because you're not going to find that over here. Because again, there are no regulators. This is crypto. The information and the facts is what regulates what goes on. So if you don't know what you need to know, you're going to get screwed over. Period. It's happened to damn near everybody. I mean, it's rare the individuals that hasn't happened to. The few that I do know were fortunate enough to run into Richard Hart in their first foray into crypto. That's not going to be everybody's experience. And the sad fact is that it sure as hell isn't going to be ever moving forward if we're not careful with how we disseminate information from within the community. I mean, I never thought in my life that I would have heard some clown from within the community down talking Hex and Richard Hart. I mean, I can't drop that shit. I'm going to beat that drum until that motherfucker disappears because there's nothing else to do. How dare you disrespect not only the community, but your damn self by being that fucking stupid. I mean, it's crazy. It's real crazy. We sat here and watched 200X from Big Payday to the top. I think it's a little disingenuous to pretend that you have a clue when nobody even knows who the fuck you are. So it's kind of funny that now all of a sudden you have people pretending to want to stand up for freedom and crypto principles and all that. And while that's the trend of the moment because of the SEC case and all that stuff, you know, it's imperative for you guys that are on the outside in learning, so to speak, because you don't know the rules, you don't know the regs, you don't understand really what's going on. It's just something that's happening for you. You know, it's important to understand where you are in the picture because it's so easy to get misinformed by buffoons. I mean, this is literally why the world is where it is. It's crucial that you wrap your head around that if you're going to pretend to do this crypto thing successfully. Because once again, there's nothing but shillers of misinformation out there. Nothing but. So how do you ensure success when the 99% are literally out there to screw you over? Think about that. These people are not here to help you. If they were, and I'm about to retweet the tweet for your to post your questions. But these are things that seriously take into consideration. Crypto is easy. Why do people think that they have to sell you anything? There's nothing to sell. There's an actual problem. There's an actual solution to the problem. 1 + 1 is 2. That's it. So where do you go when people don't know what to say to help you? And you kind of know that's what's happening because you've been sold a bag of bullshit before. Everybody has. And there's nothing wrong with that because people can do whatever they want. However, in the world of the internet, what are the consequences? The consequence is that you suffer the repercussions of their actions. Not the other way around. There is no consequence for that individual that's sharing the misinformation. They just keep it moving. They don't give a fuck about you. That's real life. So how do you put yourself in a position to find that information that's going to keep you out of the doldrums? Because, there's a lot of motherfuckers living down there. And it don't matter whether you talking crypto, stocks, futures, Forex, fucking you name it. Weed, crack, whatever. There's people that suck at making money because they don't understand it's simple. And that's the most dangerous thing about it. Think about it. You live in a time where if you were born before 1990, you saw the tech bubble. Now, what came with the tech bubble? Y2K, the proliferation of online trading, a whole new era of being able to build wealth with your own sweat equity, right? You are able to do it from your crib. That wasn't available before. Period. So fast forward to 2023. We're talking about 24 years now, right? It's 24 years. And now things have gotten to the point where it's not the value of the stock that people are concerned with. It's the value of the interest rate. People always have talked about interest rates. And the reason I'm pivoting towards interest rates right now will become apparent once I get to the point that will help you wrap your head around why does this guy care about interest rates. I remember when I was a kid and you would see, financial stuff whenever. The only time anybody cared about interest rates was when there was a Fed meeting. That was it. Right? It wasn't this everyday thing. Everyday thing is the stock market, the Forex market even is more everyday. Hell, the commodities markets is more everyday. Not interest rates. So by the time the crash was over and people realized that the scam was not going to be not a scam. Because you got to understand, when all of this stuff was happening in 2006, 7, 8, 9, there were a lot of people that really could not wrap their head around what was going on and why. And the younger you were, and the more closer you wanted to be to the reality of what was happening, because I was one of those people, the less you actually knew, right? Because odds are you were new. This big blow up attracted you, right? Because as we all know, when we're riding on the street or on the highway, what's happening? Well, we're just looking at that that destruction, whether we want to or not. I mean, it doesn't matter where I've been. I've always seen people just stare, right? And please post your questions in the tweet I retweeted earlier. I'll allow for questions later on. I just seen somebody had a request in the spaces. Just give me some time to get through my little story building. I like to build the story, then open the floor up. Thank you. Once everybody figured out what was going on, it was already too late at that point. And we're talking, 2009, and rates were getting crushed. I mean, I think they were already at zero at that point, if not near. And very few people really understood that there was no going back at that time. And while we're at 5% plus now, you have to remember that interest rates were at zero for over 10 years. That never, ever happens. Period. Never, ever happened. Right? That's never happened in the history of markets. Right? And that's why people never saw it going back. Now, think about what happened thereafter. Right? We're talking about 10 years, a full decade of people forgetting what an actual economy is like. Cost of capital, which is the main thing that matters to all businesses in the 21st century, because there is not a business that I know of, that you know of, that we all know of, that doesn't operate on credit, right? And that's exactly what it's about. Think about what you've seen in the past year, or year to date, really, since 2023 started. Interest rates have kept shooting higher and higher through time. However, what's the most interesting thing that's happened in conjunction with that? It's that people are now in a position that they've never been in before. Think about that. Back in the day, there was an alternative because the currency was still backed by something. Right? It was still backed by something to a degree. But then that got taken away. Your own economy or your own treasury rugged you. Right? Your own government. And in essence, you rugged yourself. Now, how did that happen? Well, you don't know the rules. You don't know the law of the land. The law of the land. That's exactly why they got away with it. Because nobody that was alive at the time that could speak up said anything. They just let it happen. The excuse is irrelevant. That's simply what occurred. The fact that communications weren't whatever and all that bullshit that boomers like to bring up and older people, don't matter. It happened. And everybody let it happen. It's a small group of people that made it happen. So we can't continue to pretend that it's okay because it's just what it is. It's not okay. That's exactly why we are where we are now. So the question is, well, what do we do? How do we pivot? You know, what's the next step? You know, what options do we have? And that's the billion, quadrillion, actually, that's the 14 quadrillion dollar question. And if you don't know what 14 quadrillion means, well, you might want to follow me if you don't already, because eventually I'll reveal what that number signifies and what it entails and what the implication of that number is. Because people have to understand what's about to happen. And that number 14 quadrillion has a lot to do with that. And if you don't know what Weimar Germany is, you might want to start Googling. Because that's what's going to happen in the West. You have to understand, you cannot print money infinitely and think there will be no consequences. Think about it. What happens when you divide a pie and never stop dividing a pie? That's literally what's happening with currency. Fiat currency, that's exactly what fiat currency is. That's the best analogy anyone can give you about what is happening in a fiat reserve economy, in a fractional reserve economy, excuse me. A pie is being taken and being sliced infinitely. And no matter how many times it is not sliced, it is sliced too many times. Because what you eventually get is so thin that you're not holding anything. Capiche? Does that make sense? Because that's literally where we're at right now. How many times can a pie be cut? And we keep pretending that there are no consequences to that action. The increase in the value of your house is the decrease in the value of your purchasing power. The increase in the value of any asset you think you have is the actual literal debasement of the currency that you own that asset in over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years. That's what the math shows. There's a million ways that it could be shown. It's infinite damn near. Because I just keep finding new ways. And I've shown a billion of them already on my YouTube channel. So the question becomes, why does crypto matter? You know, I think I gave a nice 30-minute tee up as to why it matters. You know, the dollar, which is, for now, the beck and call of what we consider to be, or not what we consider to be, what the markets consider to be the standard of safety, right? And if you don't know, last week, what rating agency was it? I think it was Fitch. Fitch downgraded the U.S. a grade, and all that means is like, you know, it's like when your credit score gets lowered. You know, it increases your cost of borrowing. And what's interesting is, if you think about it, well, the U.S. has already been doing that themselves anyway, right? Because we went from 0 to 5+% in a matter of no time, right? That shit happened in no time. So much so that anybody that's been paying attention sees the ramifications in the economy. Real estate is suffering. Car market is suffering. Job market is the weirdest it's ever been. I don't even know what to make of it. Certain companies are hiring, certain companies are not. It's really industry specific, right? All right, interest rates are actually going down. Well, yeah, so the spreads, I don't want to get too macro. So what happens is over time, that cost of capital, right, puts stress on the economic system. And that's what we're seeing right now. Fed funds rate are at 5 1/8%. You know, the last time rates were that high, let's see, in 2006, 7, May 2007. All right, that's the last time interest rates were this high from a primary dealer perspective. Now, a primary dealer, they're the people that are creating the money in the economy, right? When you go borrow or they get issue credit or whatever the case is, they're the ones that are adding those zeros and ones to the balance sheets, you know, wherever they're at. And all that rolls up to the Fed, right? That's how it works. That's why it's called the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve System is the same regardless of the country. They're all doing the same thing. And I've also shown how they operate in concert, thus letting you know even further that they all are, in fact, acting in a concerted effort to destabilize or stabilize the economy, to conduct whatever actions they're trying to conduct, right? Because that's what they do. They're always out here trying to manipulate, dictate, regulate. And this is why knowing what a security is, knowing what the word "the" means, like all these stupid things, knowing what the word "nice" means, knowing what the word "kind" means, all these ridiculous things that you think you know, but you don't. That's why they're important to tackle. Because at the end of the day, who is going to come and save you when those that control the economy say it's game over for us all? Because it's coming. You see it every day. They're shutting down banks left and right. There was just a bank shut down the other day. Last week, there was one in Kansas got shut down. So when will it stop? Every day they print more money. You know, the current estimate is that the national debt goes up $5.2 billion a day or something like that. I'm pretty sure it's more. Because when you sit here and think about how money is spent frivolously, I mean, there's nobody overseeing government. Nobody. We're the ones that are supposed to check them. There is nobody to check them, and we don't do it. So they're going to do whatever they want. That's just the way it works. You know, you might be asking, well, how do I learn how to participate in fixing shit? Well, that's a whole nother conversation, right? Step one is understanding that there's a problem, because you can't know what to do if you don't know what the problem is. Right? So that's step one. This is why education, which is step two, is so imperative. What are we doing pretending to be participating in crypto, thinking we're going to escape the system with their own money? It's a joke. You're not going anywhere. You're staying right the fuck there, and they're going to take it whenever the fuck they feel like it, because it's not even your money. It's their shit. Read what the currency says when you got it in your hand. If you ever do have cash in your hand, it literally says, note, the denomination of the bill is irrelevant. You can have all the billions of notes you want. You still owe that shit to somebody, and they can take it whenever they want. That's an economic and financial and accounting fact. That's not an opinion. So understanding that is step one in understanding the bigger issue, right? Because there's, again, always layers to it, you know, and that's kind of what gets confusing and frustrating for us as new individuals. I remember when I first found out about crypto, I'm a Bitcoin OG, but I would never call myself that because that's fucking dumb, because I sold early. I'm not retired off Bitcoin. I don't have any Bitcoin. And if I do, I couldn't tell you, because I sure as hell do not remember. At the end of the day, what matters is that you understand the financial problem and that you find the financial safety that you're seeking. That's what's important. Because at the end of the day, how are you going to determine what makes sense and what doesn't financially? Right? How do you determine that when you don't really have any basis to assess what makes sense and what doesn't? When all you know is one currency. And I have to say, I'm very fortunate to not be just an American and to be a first generation American and to have experienced seeing the economic destruction that was happening in my country when I was a child. Because I couldn't, I think back now and I see it so clearly, but at the time, 5, 10, 15, I couldn't understand what was happening in my country. All I knew is that every time I went back, shit was worse. And now it's worse than it's ever been, of course. But the thing about it that we could not see as persons that were born offshore from our country, right? Because I'm first generation American. The U.S. was going down along with everything else at the same time. Until I joined the military and traveled around the world, I didn't understand that. People in America think that they're special and saved from the economic destruction that occurs elsewhere without understanding that we're the ones imposing that economic destruction, step one. And step two, that economic destruction is literally a function of what we're exporting to other countries and will therefore be boomeranged back one day. Because guess what? People opt to play in this economic system because they think it is beneficial to do so. That is all. This notion about military power that the U.S. has and all this other bullshit, while true, that is not the bee's knees. That is not what keeps the suckers in the game. It is not. Do you honestly think that they continuously go from country to country, destroying one nation after the other, and nobody's going to catch on? I caught on in Iraq as soon as I got there, motherfucker. What are you thinking? And this is the thing that you get. This is the kind of information that people that have no life experience, no financial experience, no economic experience, no any experience will relay to you. As if that shit makes any sense. And it simply does not. Because why in the hell would anybody just let the bully run the block when they don't have to? I'm not participating as an American, as a New York national, or none of that shit. In none of that shit, I'm not. And there's plenty of other guys that are lining up with me that were in the service that are not, that know what the Constitution says, that understands what's going on, and relay these facts as such. So, how do you make that next step, right? It's all about understanding the why. That's why that first spaces is critical. Must hear. Because at the end of the day, we're always going to want more. We're always going to want more because we don't understand that we don't actually need more. This scarcity mindset is what drives a lot of people to think that they need more. I mean, just look at how people view cryptocurrencies. Some people think that if it doesn't have a hard fixed supply, it doesn't make sense. They can't wrap their head around how complex systems function enough to understand that shit doesn't actually matter. Because if that was the case, well, why do stocks go up? Ever? I mean, these are the people that cannot answer these questions. They just yap, yap, yap. Right? And it's so easy to yap and you don't know anything. Especially when there's nobody there to check you. And you don't know anything. But at the end of the day, the facts always ring true. Things go up because we make them go up. Simple. Has nothing to do with supply. If there's enough demand versus supply, that shit gonna fly. And if it's the opposite, it's gonna dive. It's that simple. That's how it works, right? And all you gotta do is look at charts. It's really not rocket science. So when there's game theory optimal systems afoot, you might want to pay attention. Because when the decision is not only to just buy and sell, it kind of changes things a little bit. And that's hard for people that don't have any experience to understand. Because they only have a linear frame of thought. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you got to know when you're lacking. That's what's up. Because at the end of the day, this is about finding success. Not about what coin is best, blah, 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 blah. Like, everybody's going to do and say whatever they want to do and say. But do you understand what you're doing and why you're saying what you're saying? Very few actually do. And that's what separates the pros from the hoes. Make sure you understand who's talking to you when somebody's talking to you. Because if you're hearing some information that don't add up, odds are that's a hoe. And now we're going to kill the little narrative building here, and we're going to answer some questions. Let me get to the questions that I got over here in the tweets. Let me see. Let's see here. So searching for questions. And then I'll open up for Q&A. But of course, I'm checking your profile. So if I see you on some bullshit, I'm not going to let you talk. So just, get the fuck out of my face. I don't know.
Also, Wells, I posted your questions tweet into the chat so people can just get to it easy. And then, I put some questions in there just to kind of get things rolling. But, yeah, just let us know, and then we can open it up for people to ask questions.
Word. All right, so here's the first question I got from PulseFormer1. How can ETH be referred to or classified as money when it's given to RH but considered a security for every other argument? ETH is just the example. Can you replace it? You can replace it with any crypto. All right, so here's something that we got to understand about how the system works. If you're not from an inner city or you've never, suffered anything in your life or you don't know anything about the justice system, you're about to learn the hard truth. America does not have a justice system. That shit is a lie. Period. Not a debatable fact. If you don't know better, that sucks. Or congrats because your experience has been to the contrary. But for the average American, that's not the case. So what's happening now is exactly that. But again, it goes even further than that because is the SEC even legal? Are they even a lawful entity? Should they even exist? Right? These are the questions that we should be asking ourselves. Not how can ETH be referred to or classified as money? Like anything is money, bro. You know what I'm saying? A chair is money. A fan is money. And I think that the problem people have is understanding the difference in what some random person says because they feel like it and society gives them some random title and position that ain't even real. And reality, right? Like reality is that if somebody wants your marbles for that TV, the marbles just became money. Hope that answers the question. Because, you know, at the end of the day, if you read any of the nonsense in that complaint, you quickly understand that it's not even a complaint. It's really just a marketing piece. So, how does the justice system actually work? Well, if you get charged with something and you get indicted, you know, it goes up on a charge sheet. And there's money tied to that. And if you've been watching the whole FTX scandal and the SBF, the Sam Bankman-Fried saga, you know that if you pay off people, you walk. So, you know, bribery works in America. I mean, I don't know why people don't understand this in 2023, but lobbying is legal bribery. So, you know, learn how the system works. Try not to be confused when you see what you would consider illegal things happen, because they're not illegal. You need to learn how the system works. Because, like I just explained, an indictment is literally a bill. It's a charge sheet. It's itemized. It has things on there saying whatever you did and the cost to the community. And by community, you know, the court system. Not you and me, because we don't benefit from none of that. So what happens is, if you can pay the bill, you walk. Apparently, SBF paid enough to be able to walk, because he walked. So if you're looking at this SEC thing as if it's real, you got to understand it's not. Because once again, it's about jurisdiction. And I think there's a question for that as well. So let's see. Got a question here from Disciple. With the current traditional market and people waking up to the overall scam, what type of people do I see coming into crypto over the course of the next 2 to 3 years? That's a good one. I gotta be honest. I think from the professional aspect of the game, it's gonna be a slow trickle at first, because it's going to be dependent on what others are doing. Because from the professional stance, you're better off losing money like the others than trying to win in some fancy way and having investors take money from you, because they're using benchmarks to compare your performance. And what a benchmark is, it's like a ruler. So if the S&P, which is considered a benchmark, if your benchmark is the S&P 500, for example, and the S&P does 10% this quarter and you do 8%, and you bought some shit that wasn't the S&P 500 basket, and that's what was expected of you to do, you know, your investors got all the right in the world based on that document that they signed with you, the fund manager, to pull funds, regardless of whatever gatekeeping you got on the money. It's not going to matter. You're going to have to run those funds, period. Not an option. Because you broke your investment rules, guidelines, whatever you want to call them. You broke them. You broke what the status quo was going to be. You deviated from what your client expected. And that's why it's going to be a slow trickle from the professional side. Now, from the retail side, I'd say probably be a lot quicker, especially if this movie starts making its rounds, because again, you know, it's one thing for a movie to be on Netflix and Amazon Prime and all of that bullshit, but it's entirely different when people can see it outside, when they're outside. People really discount reality because of the internet. And I'm going to tell you guys once again, stop doing that. The internet is only an information protocol. It is not where shit happens. It is not where the world occurs. It is not none of that. It's a place to get information from. So if you're out here living on the motherfucking internet, stop it. Get some help, because you fucking need it. Shit is not real. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your life. Get out. Do something. Just saying. Now, the retail people, they're going to get sucked in by whatever they hear, right? Narrative building, commercials, ads. This is why this movie is pretty important, because presenting characters such as Richard Hart into the mix versus everything else that fake crypto has to offer, because everything else is fake crypto, period. That's not debatable either. Everything else is centralized, controlled by some centralized entity, on a centralized exchange only, doing some bullshit that ain't crypto, some funny shit. It ain't crypto. Crypto implies zero intermediaries. Zero. I don't know if people know what zero means, but that shit means zero. Hex works without Richard Hart. Richard Hart is irrelevant. So the SEC can't keep playing themselves all they want, suing whoever they want. Doesn't matter. Hex is going to continue to do what it does, and the sucker's going to continue to lose, and the winner's going to continue to win, because knowing how to read is the key. And this is why, when it comes to the retail side of the equation, it's going to be hard to really assess, because look, Bitcoin cryptocurrency itself is retail outright. There is no institutional epithet here. You know, Galaxy Digital and all those guys, they showed up in fucking 2015, 2014. They got fucking lucky. They took a shot in the dark. That's what they did. Or they got the tap on the shoulder. Either or, depends your perspective, right? So you got to understand the two sides of the coin. The institutional side, which is the professional side, and how they're going to address crypto, and the retail side and how they're going to address crypto. Retail is going to be more driven by what they see in the public space, being advertising, marketing campaigns, movies, shit on social media, what they hear from their friends and their homies, stuff like that. You know, that's why word of mouth is imperative. Word of mouth is the most important marketing tool that we got. You know, we can direct mail and world star hip hop motherfuckers to death. But if it's not my homie, I don't really care. I personally do not care about advertising. I have never, ever reacted to that. Ever in my life. Never. Never have I seen some, yeah, I'm going to do that or get that. Or I've never, ever done that in my life. I don't understand advertising. Shit does not work in my opinion. But it does because other motherfuckers react to it. So that's what makes a market. And that's why it's hard to really say. But, you know, even when it comes to retail, you got different levels, right? You got your doctor class and lower. Those people that make money, think they're smart, but they're not. You know, those are the best people for people like me, because they're going to come in thinking they got a clue and they don't, you know. Those are the guys that get wiped out. Those are the guys buying tops and selling bottoms always. Never fails, because they're going based off emotion and they got money. So they think they fucking got a clue. And that's what's dangerous. You know, not understanding how markets work. That's what gets people in trouble. And that's why retail washes in and out, while the institutions are always waiting. You know, they're always waiting in the rear for when to sell to retail and when to buy it from retail. See what I'm saying? So that's how that's going to go down. But over the next 2-3 years, it's going to really be more a retail-driven story in the front than an institutional-driven story. Because, again, the institutions, if BlackRock, Vanguard, what's the other one? Schwab, I think, is the other big one. BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, all those big boys. If they really go ham on crypto, forget about it. It's going to be hard to say what's going to happen, because it could be the first major pump, or it could be the only major pump that we see, period, as far as fake crypto goes. And then that's it for fake crypto, because, again, what's the objective of the institutions? They don't need to get rich. They need to control it. And I think all those dumb Bitcoin maxis that be hating on everybody else, forget that. Because they think that they're special or some shit. They don't understand that they're going to get wrecked too. You know, they're not going to benefit. So those are things you got to be aware of. Let's see here. Just kicked out your way, bro. I ain't see you. So yeah, that's how that one is gonna go. And I know people don't expect these questions to be long or the answers to be long, but there's a lot of variables that go into what could happen. And if the institutions really, because again, at work, I see it. I see the institutional demand now, and I have to be aware of it. I don't get the option to ignore it. I have to be aware of it. So when I see it, I got to pay attention to what exactly they're doing with crypto. So I literally know, and I have to be careful what I say because I can't be talking about this shit. So, institutional demand is there. The question is, what are the big boys going to do? And that's what we have to be on the lookout for, because if they're going to be like Larry Fink has been, well, you can only imagine what's coming. All right, you got another question. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Can you please explain why Hex is real crypto versus other things we see in the market? Sure thing. I alluded to it a little bit earlier, and it's really surrounding the fact that once the protocol was released, it was launched, it was done. There was no more working on it. There was no more tweaking it. Once it was launched, December 2nd, 2019, that was it. It was done. Nothing else to talk about. It was all marketing effort after that point in time. So when people say, what does Hex do, or I don't understand it, or whatever, they're not even reading into it. They're not looking into it. They just think it's just something you buy and sell like everything else. So they're expecting some gimmick, right? That's ultimately what they're expecting. That's why they ask that question. And I don't think people really understand that, but that's what's happening. For Bitcoin, it was all about what the narrative was for a long time. And for ETH, same deal. So it's always about what people think is the reason for this thing. It's never really what this thing is. You see, because when I was learning crypto at first, that never really became a question we asked ourselves as we were entering this space as new students, right, to this thing called crypto, because at the beginning of it, it was a lot of guys that were on both sides of the fence. If they weren't just in crypto, right, they were also trading regular markets. So all the stuff we saw back then, it was nothing like Hex. Even Bitcoin wasn't really complete when it was launched. And that's missed on a lot of people. That's why you had all those forks and all that shit come on later on down the line. You see? And people forget that because it was so long ago, but it matters. All these things that we think do not matter, they're imperative, because this is why we can answer questions like this. When Hex was launched, it was done. There was nobody else to say anything about it. Nobody else to talk to about it. There was no more work on it. It was just done. That was it. Right? And when you read the Bitcoin white paper, the Bitcoin white paper is very clear. Crypto is a peer-to-peer digital medium of transfer where no intermediaries are required. So if you can only trade Bitcoin on a centralized exchange or with some third party, is it really peer-to-peer? No, not at all. And that's what we had to contend with during the first basically 9 years of crypto, 10 years of crypto, right? Up until Uniswap came out and gave us the ability to trade decentralized in a seamless fashion, up until last week when they started, editing addresses and coins and shit on their DEX. And clearly they're not a DEX, right? They're a SEX, they're a centralized exchange. So that's also important to remember now as we move forward, because again, we're early, right? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Uniswap was a decentralized exchange. Now, 2023, no longer the case. It happens, right? And this is why it's important to stay tapped into what's happening and understanding the base elements of what crypto is, because what happens is that, you know, you come across Hex, and this happened to me. You come across Hex and you still out here looking because you think you got to own all these fucking things. And, fact is you don't. That's a lie. You want to own the best things. That's what you want. You don't want to own all the things. You want to own all the best things. Because why would you own a million crappy things? That just doesn't make sense. I don't get that. Why do you want that? I don't know. So you come across this thing called Hex. It provides you two things that we all want: capital appreciation and yield, right? And yield is what you get for just staking the coin. So if you're holding the coin long term, right, because this is brand new, this is crypto, this thing, we saw what Hex did. We saw what Ethereum did from zero, both of them. And if this Hex thing is the real deal, like we think it is, why would we not hold it long term? Especially when there's nobody there to fuck it up in the meantime. And I mean nobody. And that's the difference between Hex and everything else. You set the literal standards of what's going to happen, when, and nobody else can mess it up. That's what makes Hex a real crypto versus everybody else's coin. There's a lot of coins out here that people think are cryptos and they're not. They think they're mainnet launches and they're not. They're still on they're really trading testnet coins on a DEX and they don't even know it because nobody is educating them properly for them to know that. And that's why Hex is real crypto versus other things we see in the market. If you have anything being tweaked on to this day, you really, really cannot call it a real crypto, unfortunately. It could be progressing towards that goal, sure. Because even PulseChain is, right? In a lot of ways, PulseChain is not done, right? PulseChain was released early to shut everybody the hell up. Because it's got to be annoying to be rich and these guys that are working as fast as they can to produce this great product. And you got all these crybabies that don't even understand anything, aren't trying to participate and add value. They just crying. And these people are still crying to this day. Oh, maybe not today, because today is cool to be on Rich's Hard Good side and all that shit. But, maybe next week after everybody forgets about the SEC shit, they'll be crying again. That's why crypto matters. Because those of us that are real and understand real economics and real finance, we don't want to be involved with people like that. They just take away, they detract from the scenario of value. They don't add value. That's a fact. And that's why Hex is real crypto and everything else is fugazi. Next question from a Pulse disciple is, and they're just coming up in chronological order, so I'm sorry if I haven't gotten to you yet, but the order that they're coming through in the tweets. What are the pros and cons of having no regulations in the DeFi space? It's a good question. I talked about this really for like the first 30 minutes. It's good and bad. The good is that we dictate what's crypto and what's not. That's why I will never change my narrative as to what real crypto is, and that is what real crypto is, not what people want it to be. Right? Just like we think we know what money is, but we don't really know what money is. That's why we are dealing with crypto nowadays. Because everybody thought they knew. But no, you didn't have a clue what money was. That's why fucking crypto exists now. and that's, that's important. Because regulation is exactly what got us to this point. Regulation has not helped added value or done anything in the last 50 years that I can think of that's been positive. The last thing I can think of that was value add was the Glass-Steagall Act, and that's been repealed. Everything after that has been invasive financially, intrusive, whatever you want. It hasn't added value, not at all. When you think about FATCA, all FATCA did was give all governments carte blanche on your financials. The Patriot Act teed it up. The FATCA, financial crises, just opened it up. I mean, that's all that did. That's exactly what that did. Because only after that point in time did they start asking why you sending money, where you're sending money, for what you're sending money for. Only then did that start happening. So those are the cons of regulation. You know, I honestly can't think of any pros. And the reason that is because regulatory bodies do the following. They allow people to think that they don't have to be educated in a topic, in a subject matter. And that's exactly the problem. Right? I think we'd all agree that that's exactly the problem. You know, what value is there in participating in a market where there are rules, but they only apply to you, not to the whole market? I mean, is there any value in that? I think we can all agree there isn't any. And that's exactly why I can't think of any pros when it comes to regulations. Education is the best regulation. That's my stance on that. All right. Question from Sir Hexalot 365. What is jurisdiction? Very great question, because as you mentioned in your tweet, people seem to struggle with this. Yes, they do. And the main reason why they struggle with that is because they don't even know it's a thing. Luckily for me, I was fortunate enough to take a business law class my freshman year. Or was it my sophomore year? I can't even remember, but it's probably the best class. I mean, I remember damn near everything from that fucking class. I didn't even have to take notes. You know, I probably still got the book somewhere, but I don't need it. I remember all that shit. Because at the end of the day, how does everything work, folks? Based on text. Where does text come from? Policy, law, right? Procedure, protocol. All this shit is based upon man's writing of whatever they think makes sense to do. So if you want to be involved in money making, business, and all that good stuff, you got to know what the rules are, right? That means you got to understand the law. Because once you're no longer in school, there are no real rules. It's just the law. And if you don't know the law, you will get taken advantage of. That's why you got debt collectors left and right taking money from people, and they don't even know they don't got to pay it anymore. Education is what teaches you that, because no bank is going to tell you that. School isn't going to teach you not to pay your debts because somebody else already paid them for you. Right? I mean, so what's jurisdiction? Jurisdiction is the area in which you live where certain rules apply to you and only you. So, for example, if you live in Japan, U.S. laws cannot apply to you, even if you're a U.S. citizen. If you're residing in Japan, you are subject to Japan law. Plain and simple. If you are trying to open an account in the U.S. as a Japanese resident, you will not be able to, because you are subject to Japan law. You see, and Japan law states you can't. See? If you're living in the UK, same deal. You're subject to UK law. That's the jurisdiction within which you reside. Just like if you're in New York City, right, you're subject to New York City law. Not rules and regulations. There's a difference. You got to know law. Just like you didn't have to get the jab, because that shit could never be a law. Period. Just like they backtracking and sucking all the dick they can now on the jab. That shit was never a law. And that's why everybody that subjected themselves to that foolish thing is now on the clock, right? And we see it. So that's the importance behind jurisdiction, right? And now let's think about it. What's the jurisdiction on the internet? Is there one? They'll tell you there is one, because it behooves them to make that shit up. But you think about is there such a thing as a jurisdiction on the internet? I mean, cyberspace is a thing, but how can you police cyberspace? You literally cannot. Only thing you can do is shut it off. Right? Right? So what's the jurisdiction? Who can do what when nobody can actually do anything? Right? That's crypto. We live on the internet, right? Think about it. When did Amazon start, or when did states start collecting taxes on online sales? When the third party entity from which you are buying that product decided to start giving it up. Only then. And you were the one being charged for it. They aren't paying for that shit. Your dumb ass is. Because of the state you choose to live in. So you're subject to those rules and regs because that third party entity is complying. You're not. Because you were never paying it until they forced you to pay it. See? And that's because of the jurisdiction in which you live. They pick that up from the address on your card. And that's how they know to tax your ass a certain amount. All right, let's keep it pushing. Got a few more questions here from LPD Hex Pulse 234. All right, brother, let's see what you got here. Great questions. You guys, about 4 questions, I think. First one is, why does staking, locking up, mining matter? Great question. That's what Richard Hart calls a pumpamental. Right? And if you never heard of pumpamentals.com, go check it out. Pumpamental is an anecdote that allows the market to set itself up for positive performance. Right? And that, in essence, is what staking, locking up, or mining does. Because in our mining, what we're doing is we're burning X amount of coins to generate Y amount of coins based on whatever the inflation rate that we're receiving is. That's all that is. Locking up coins, staking up, whatever word you want to use, doesn't really matter. The impact is the same. The result is the same. And that's what's important to understand. At the end of the day, having that ability to generate more yield is beneficial to you, the end user, because when you really think about what Hex is and how it goes, you know, this is really an economic system. It's not just a currency. Because if you think about the US dollar and how it operates, well, it's always being created, not at a specific rate, at a rate that's deemed whatever it is by some random people, not you, not a system, not math, right? Hex, however, is the opposite, right? Take whatever fiat is and invert it, plus add the inflation, except that instead of the primary dealers receiving it, aka the Federal Reserve's homies, you get to determine what you receive, if you want to receive anything at all, because you don't have to lock up your Hex. You don't have to mine. You don't have to stake. You don't have to do anything. However, it's a pretty smart move to do so if you want to earn some yield. Because why not? I don't understand people that don't like yield. This shit is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But we see it all day. Especially from everybody else outside of Hex, pretty much. All right, next question is, what makes a t-share better than locking up with some other crypto? All right, great question. So first of all, when you lock up, quote unquote, with some other crypto, you're not actually locking up anything, first of all. Secondly, you're giving up your keys. Thirdly, the yield you're going to get is going to be paltry, and you're risking your bag. Whatever your state you're locking up or whatever, you're risking it. You don't have control over it anymore. So as we saw throughout the year of 2022, all of those third-party yield-generating platforms are super risky because you're the yield. There is no yield mechanism. You are the yield. Now, you might be asking, how could that be? Well, you got to think about it. Where's the yield coming from? If not from an engineered system like Hex. Because Hex is engineered to do the things that it does. Right? The T-share rate is that thing. That is what sets it up for yield generation or inflation generation, right? Because that is what drives the T-share rate. How much Hex is being minted, right? How much Hex is being created from the system. That's what drives the T-share rate higher over time. If you end a stake and you generate X return, you know, there's only so much return the system knows you're able to generate, right? Because it's tracking that T-share, right? And that's the most important thing to understand about Hex from a high level point of view. It's the fact that it's an engineered inflation producing system that operates to really replace the fractional reserve banking system. That's ultimately what its most successful fit could be, because it's designed to be that when you think about it. The interest rate, but people would consider the interest rate is the inflation rate of 3.69, right? That 3.69 is the maximum yield or the maximum inflation that the system can imprint, period. And it does less than that every year. And I think the last estimate I had was that the system was probably like 30% short of whatever inflation is supposed to have generated up to that point in time. Man, it's got to be less by now, because people have been EESing and getting out left and right. So there's less people stake, less people earning. So there's more to be made by those that understand the opportunity, which is twofold when it comes to Hex. It's not just capital appreciation. It's capital appreciation plus generating inflation or minting more coins on top of the coins that you started out with. Because why not? I don't understand why you don't want more money, because that's the claim, right? Everybody's here to get rich. But I don't really believe that shit. Especially not after coming back to crypto, you know, after 2020. That's not true. You know, people are here to have egos and take their stance and, you know, have their agenda and whatever they want to do. You know, it ultimately doesn't matter. But fact remains, people are not sticking to the facts. Right? They're going with what they want to go with. And that's okay. You know, if it makes sense, you know, knock yourself out. But understand that consequences and repercussions are real when it comes to math. Markets don't give a shit. Ask anybody that's been holding XLM and XRP for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. Markets don't care. They've been around almost as long as Bitcoin. They don't have the same performance as Bitcoin. There's a lot of coins in that camp. Or ETH, right? So, hell, XRP and XLM have both been around longer than Ethereum. They do not have the same performance. So this notion that getting in early is the answer is flawed. Important to understand that. So let's move on to the next question. Oh, well, I hope I answered that T-share mechanism and why it's better. I think I did, yeah. Because, you know, that's really the determinant for everything in the system. If you don't have T-shares, you're not earning yield. And if you're not earning yield, you're just only exposed to capital appreciation. But you really want to be exposed to capital appreciation plus yield. And if you understand that at the end of the day, the T-share rate is what determines how much you earn in yield, right, then you understand the significance of the T-share rate, because that's essentially the barometer for how much hex you have to buy just to earn a payout for one T-share. And today we're talking like 28,500 plus hex per T-share. So even though the price is lower than it was before, a year ago, guess what? People have to buy more hex than ever before. 28,972.7 hex. Right now, a T-share with no duration costs $173. And that's assuming that the price of hex is the same as it was yesterday at 3:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or this morning, because I think today is the 6th. Yeah, this morning at Eastern Standard Time. Right? So these are the things you got to kind of have your head wrapped around. Right? There's a lot of elements, a lot of moving parts that we got to understand to successfully be able to engage the crypto trade with no fear. Right? And I think that's what we want. We want to be able to set it and forget it, right? It's so easy to think we can do that just because we're early. That's not always the case, guys. That is super important to understand. And I just gave you 2 coins, right? Just 2, only 2 that prove that to be the case. So yes, it's important to understand what a coin does. Yes, it's important to understand what the T-share rate is all about here when it comes to hex. So yeah, you know, do your due diligence at all times. All right, let me keep it moving. Let's see where to go. All right. Next question is, could hexicans sue the SEC for market manipulation or attempting some other scheme? Interesting question. I hadn't even considered that. And in general, no. We collectively cannot, as in hexicans. Now, can we file a class action lawsuit? Yep, sure can. Again, if you listen to my first spaces that I did on the 2nd, I lay out what their regulatory responsibilities are. They're not meeting them. So there is room for complaint. Indeed. What I do not know is if there's ever been an instance in which a civilian has actually, actually, hell yeah, yep. It's just been a while since I thought about it. Yep, sure can. Moving on. Is it possible SEC knows they have no jurisdiction and are trying to manipulate hex? Yes, that's exactly what they've been doing the entire time in the crypto space. Because if you know anything about the guy that's the so-called chairman of the SEC, you know that he knows full and well the definition of crypto. So he knows what he's doing. So yes, he knows he's manipulating. All right, let's see if we got any other typed out questions. All right, that has a mic question, no doubt. I got you, homie. Give me a second. Good one, guys. Good one. Let's see here. Now, ATX isn't going to be pulling up. He's tied up today. But he always sends much love and respect to the community for sure. You guys already know. Let's see here. Who knows? So there's one question in here. What's up with the whale dumping? There's something you guys got to understand about price action. If you don't have a long-term perspective, there's always going to be a reason to question why price is doing what it's doing. Right? My answer to you is go look at a 20-year chart of Amazon. Go look at a 20-year chart of Macy's. Go look at a 20-year chart of Apple. Go look at things that go up and to the right. Berkshire Hathaway, all that shit. Go look at all these things that go up and down over time, throughout time, just like crypto does. Crypto is not the only thing that goes up and down. So why somebody is doing something, who cares is my answer. If you have capital to allocate, then take advantage and don't ask questions as to why somebody is being dumped. You can't help that. So let's see what other questions we got here, if any. Let's see. Yes, I am, bro. All right. Let's see. Oh, if I think you can speak, brother. Can you not? Hold on, let me see. Let me know if you can talk, bro. If not, you know what I'm saying? It's all good. Oh, ATX.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
What up?
ATX is in the chat. I ain't even see him. He in there for whoever asked about ATX. He's in there.
ATX, Westcott, what's up? Quinn's here. There's a lot of good brothers and sisters here. Wales, thanks for taking my question,
Thing,
man.
brother.
How are you
I'm
doing?
good, man. How about yourself?
I don't know. I feel a little smarter after I listened to you talk interrupted.
Sorry. My bad.
Yeah, my conscience is heavier now.
All right.
So there's a little bit of nuance, and I'll try and give it voice in as brief a time as I can. So we've seen. I'm not even going to say a modicum of success, but let it suffice to say that it exists out here. Okay, that agorist movements, Ubuntu movement, anarchist movements have begun the process of trying to extricate themselves from peer-to-peer transactions for goods and services, right?
Yeah.
From using the dollar to do so. I guess long short of it, if we all understand that the flow chart, whether you're a fucking Bitcoin maxi or a hexican, we understand that the flow chart to being able to perform the transactions I just alluded to, that rail takes us fairly unavoidably to now through USD fiat. I'm asking you, do you see an end around that helps us circumnavigate this Weimar Republic reality coming down on us? And moreover, like, now I'll tell you an anecdote. I had a period of time when, of all my onboards, I had gotten about 10 contractors from my region that I had onboarded, or second generation even onboarded, into Hex. And for a period of time, it looked like we ostensibly could form up a union where we would pay one another through Hex. And there were a couple times I even did this. Do you think up until now, Wales only, we could have done a better job as a community of establishing an alternative peer-to-peer transactional network for goods and services? Now, I understand trust and trustlessness becomes a part of that conversation, because unless you're in the room with the person that you're doing whatever with, you're holding a gun to their head or whatever.
Right.
Like, how are you going to ensure that? But I guess the question then is, up until now, do you think we could have done a better job doing this? And do you think that going forward, that would be one modality of circumnavigating the participation in the USD fiat system?
Yeah, that's a good one, because there's so many answers, right? There's so many ways to answer that. And, I think the hardest thing about that question is the educational aspect of it, right? Because, give me a second, guys. It's fucking...
They come, and they found out space number 2 was today. They coming. Duck down.
It's been all day with this shit today, bro. Anyway, so, let's think about it like this. When we agree to use a dollar, we're saying we're okay with using valueless money. Now, how is that? How is that the case? How is that even true? What am I saying? Wales, you're crazy. Nah, that shit is worth something because somebody else think it is. Is it? Is the question, right? And the real answer is it's not, right? Because if it was, we wouldn't even be here. Oh. You kind of get what I'm saying, though, right? Because that's ultimately what it boils down to.
You're talking about the belief where people choose to place their belief.
Correct. That's exactly right. Because we believe there's value in the thing we get paid in. That's called the U.S. dollar, when in fact there isn't. There's literally not.
Okay, so it stands to reason that with a tried and true hexican, there's no convincing that needs to be done.
The question is, do they want to actually receive payment in X denomination? That's it. That's the only question. And you know, when you look out in the literal realm, right, realm wide, you see that transactions happen for all manner of goods and services in crypto already, whether it's fake crypto or real crypto. People don't give a fuck. They just think that there's value tied to it because there's hype tied to that specific coin whenever that transaction happens.
Yeah, I was on Craigslist today, just to interject, and I noticed there's now a tab default that says I will accept payment in cryptocurrency.
Boom. There you go. It's happening. Whether people want it to or not, it's going to happen. Just like I didn't want cell phones to take over and become what they became, right? Like, they happen. Like, tech is going to happen. We can't. And this is why I say education, guys. Like, again, you want to be riding a Kia or you want to be riding a Brabus. Like, that's where we're at. And the difference in those two realities for you is you knowing where you're putting your money, because this is not the stock market. This is not even buying a car. This is so much more difficult because there is limited information available on this topic that's valid. It has to be given to you, or you have to be lucky enough to find it. Because people out here are selling agendas. They're not selling you the information that you need, right? And when you think about what I just said, the term selling shouldn't even apply. Because if you understand the problem, fuck, you're looking for a solution. I know that's how I found this shit. Because a solution is what we're all looking for, or at least should be, right? So what we decide to transact in is merely a personal choice. The question that we have to answer is, how do we educate society to the point that they understand that they might be faced with no choice at one point and have to transact in something else that's not the dollar. Like, we don't know if that day is coming, but it could be, right? Because we see them pulling these strings in the economy in such weird ways that you.
Yeah, I think it's the end game of what it's all about.
I believe so.
I mean, they'll allow us to be out here with the wheelbarrow. Right. They will allow enough suffering for, say, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. They'll allow enough of that suffering and death and struggle for the people, just enough to say, hey, we're swooping in now with your solution. Here's your solution, everyone.
That's right.
You know,
and the question is, you know, how do people stop that from happening? There's only one way, and that's with education. I don't know any other way. Because how did I get to this point where I'm able to talk about these things with such ease, where I don't even have to think? I'm just yapping. You know, to me, this is a regular ass Sunday.
It's reflexive.
Exactly. So, muscle memory. So the goal isn't to get everybody there, really, right? Because that's a tall order. But the goal is to get everybody to the point where they understand there's a problem and they understand that they need to look for a solution. That is imperative, because when you look outside every day, what do you see? Higher prices, nothing else.
Well, I look outside and I see that, like many of you, I have innocent seedlings who I wish to defend and protect and see them reared up in a good way and have a chance out here. And I see, okay, Gigi and gang, clearly, no question whatsoever, flipping us the bird, saying, fuck you, motherfuckers. We're going to go pay attention to AI right now. Do you understand what that is, everybody? That's them saying, oh, yeah, did that sting? Here's another one for you. Go fuck yourselves, bitches. We don't give a fuck what you think. That's what they're doing, man, right now. And it's almost as if whales, I feel the frustration of wanting to stop the imminent train that's hurtling down these tracks
that's impossible.
Now. That Weimar Republic shit is humming, coming at you. And I want to stop it.
Yeah, it's wild, bro. It's it'd be nice if you know, we could just plaster this shit all over the billboard, you know what I'm saying? But the fact remains that we can't. Right? People have to discover that there's an issue and realize that they have to do something about it. Personally, I don't know how you don't see that there's an issue when you're paying 100% more on every fucking thing. Period. You know.
Well, that's just how things are. Yeah. You know, it's just how the world works.
Yeah. That's one of those crazy comments, yo, that I just, ever since I was a kid, I've always like looked at people like, how stupid are you to think that shit makes sense to even say? And yo, I hear that shit at work in 2023 from young kids, from people that are younger than me.
The fluoride worked.
Oh man, did it fucking work? It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's like you want to fucking tell these kids something and you can't because, you know, they feelings and shit. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how it is nowadays. When you in that corporate America bullshit, I feel sorry for you because you can't treat adults like adults. You can't.
You get written up for speaking to an adult like an adult.
You might
get written up.
But you're gonna get definitely told something. That's for sure. You know, they gonna complain because their feelings got hurt. That's really what it boils down to. You know, that's 2023 corporate America. Think about that shit. I mean, high school came to work, motherfucker. All the motherfuckers you used to shit on in high school because they were some bitches now think they got authority and autonomy or some bullshit. Nah, you don't. You don't. Yeah.
Study hall.
So people like that at work, like, you know, they just look incompetent, honestly, because they are. You know, these are the same people that ultimately get fired because they can't hang, by FYI. So, you know, the shit settles itself ultimately. It's just like the jab. You know, while we tried to save so many people, ultimately, you know, natural selection rules all, bro. I don't know. You know what I mean? So these are the things that make education really the number one thing. How else are we going to find anything that's worth having in terms of valuable info? Right? What are we doing that this is what makes sense to do? How are we making sense of, I don't know, how are we making sense of a shitty society? I mean, I try to wrap my head around that. I fucking get set off when people try to justify shit that isn't justifiable. It's like these motherfuckers trying to justify these goddamn transvestites doing drag shows for these fucking kids. Like, you can't justify that. I don't give a fuck who you are, where you from, and where you at. You can't, period. You dead. That's it. You dead in the water. As soon as these guys go to jail, they don't live through 24 fucking hours. I don't know if you know that as a normal. But once you get hemmed up on some shit like that, you done. Your life is over. Literally. You are not making it past that first fucking day. And that's a guarantee because we don't play that shit around here. So how do you think that you're going to survive out here with that frame of mind? You're not. But this is what they want people to think is normal. It can't be. It's impossible. It can never be. Right? And that's what you got to keep in mind because at the end of the day, it's easy to talk. Everybody talks. It's easy to back up what you say, though. That's why facts are imperative. What good is an opinion if it's just a thought that has no merit? You know, it's good to have opinions that could be substantiated and backed with shit.
I got a second tier then. I mean, it's logic. It's trivium asking this next question then. So what's then, once having obtained or at least gotten one's feet wet in the education or gotten the education, you clearly as a person who more so than most has a boots on the ground understanding okay, with your education that you've gotten. And it ain't pretty, by the way, folks, getting that education. Sometimes it'll keep you up at several nights in a row. What do we do then with the education that you see from where you stand then after having obtained that information? I mean, because you and I both agree, we've observed protest movements all of our lives that haven't accomplished really anything.
Yeah, it doesn't work. That's right.
So protest, okay, that's all.
Correct. Doesn't work.
So what do we got next, man?
Education in action, right? I mean, the greatest question you could have asked would have been the first one you asked after that, right? Because that's really the answer. People have to choose what's best for them, not what's best for the system. Because the system doesn't give a fuck. The system is not there for you. The system has done nothing but show you that. The question is, are you paying attention? Right? That's ultimately what the answer is. Because at the end of the day, how good is something that you have no dominion over when you expect to have it? You don't. It's not. Right? You just played yourself. How is that a winning strategy? It's literally not. You know, and that's the kind of thing that's important to keep in mind. How do we find the success that we're looking for when everything out there almost looks like a scam? Right? Almost everything. So how do you make sense of shit that doesn't make sense? Especially when you're new to crypto and you don't know anything about it. I mean, it's almost like you have no choice but to try. And I think for some people it happens in the background. Like that's kind of what happened for me. For some people, they're able to manhandle the situation and put some work in. You know, some of us just don't know enough to be able to do that. Some of us do. Some of us are getting there. And that's the thing. It's what's difficult about this problem. The most difficult thing about this problem is the fact that we're all at different stages, right? There is no real uniformity, and there can't be, because that wouldn't make any sense. How would it? How could it? Right? That's the question. How can you make sense of something that isn't supposed to make sense, right? Like this whole thing with the SEC. You know, a lot of people that are used to fake crypto think it matters. They don't understand that it's so irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You know, it's just something for people to talk about because they don't really know the rules and regs. They don't. And this is by the SEC's own rules and regs. This is not like this is some federal stuff or whatever. Like, this is their own work. So this is important to understand. So when people like me aren't sweating these things, it's because there's nothing to sweat. It's not a function of arrogance or anything like that. It's just, you know, we read. And if you read what the regs are, and I have to work with them, right? So I work with these regs every day. And again, I have to know all this stuff. It's not really optional for me. And I just happen to know it before I had to know it. So it works out. So, you know, you have to really just know, because there is nobody out here to tell you. And that's what's dangerous about crypto. People think that these so-called influencers and whatever, like they're there to help them, and they're not. All these people that are out here bragging about whatever they got or got a gimmick. You don't see me with no gimmicks. I don't need none. And you can you can check anything I tell you and verify whether it's true or false. Right? So that's the difference between somebody that's trying to help and add value and somebody that's trying to sell you some shit. So that's important to understand. Let's see what we got going on here. I don't know if anybody got some questions. If you do, now is a good time to start lining them up. And just so you guys know, I'm checking your profile. So if I see you coming with some shilling shit, I'm just not going to pick you. So just go away. Actually, I'll just help you. Because I already see a couple of y'all. Like, use a personal account. Don't come over here shilling some shit because I'm not going to pick you. I don't need you to show shit to me. I can read. And that's actually, okay, so that's the difference between real crypto and fake crypto. Right? A person that's about it don't need you to show them shit. They can fucking read. They're not going to need you to show them anything. Pro tip. So, anybody got questions, you know what I'm saying? Step up to the plate and lay them out. If not, let me know. Also, how long I've been talking? Hour and
Yeah, I could step down if you need the mic spot.
I think other people can ask questions. You know, I don't think there's open slots, so it's no big deal if you stay on. But if anybody has questions, please, you know, make one up, whatever. Tweet one, whatever. Make it good. All right? Because I'm here to answer. Give you guys about 5 minutes to come up with some questions, man. If not, I'm out. We'll go eat. Because, you know, it's all the same info, guys. You got to just really stick to the basics. You know, this is not fancy. This is real. This is legit. You know, the problem is real. The solution is here. Question is, what are you going to do? Do you want to participate or not? Mr. Sojourner, how you doing, brother? I don't know if you're ready to talk or not, but you can go ahead.
Hey, Wales, can I make a comment real quick while he's getting ready? I think we used to focus really hard on onboarding, especially when we were wicking up to 56 cents. And then the bottom, you know, falls out. And everybody, I don't care who you are, we took the foot off the gas pedal on the onboarding effort. And then it occurs to me, you could never truly be onboarding somebody into Hex and PULSECHAIN without providing them a base layer of education, right? And to that end, I got to say, I know you guys, most of you have heard it, and I hope you all remember it, but I want to say it again. Like, Wales number 1, 2, and 3 remain like foundational education. Like, everything that he said in the first 3 episodes that he gave to Hexico remain as relevant as when they came out of his mouth as they are this very moment. So if you guys, like, if you have your little folder, your little onboarding deck, you know, include foundational educational materials, pardon me, in there, because those are the people we want around here. These are the people we want to lift up, the ones that are armed with that kind of information. And that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah, good shit, man. That's a good point, because, you know, I've made that point several times. I remember seeing people during the bear complaining about their onboards, you know, and sadly, and I think a lot of us maybe learned this the hard way, you know, we got to give them a base level of understanding of what's going on and how this works, you know.
Yeah, well, they were all rah-rah, you know. To my personal defense, they were enthusiastic, you know, and their eyes were wide open, paying attention.
For sure.
When that chart was doing that. But boy, oh boy, all that principled shit went right out the fucking door the moment that chart went down.
Right.
And, you know, I had 75 onboards, and I think less than half of them remain. You know, boo-hoo for you.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Sojourner, your turn, brother. Shoot.
Hey, man, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Mad respect, dude. I haven't talked to you in
it's been a while, yeah, man. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Yeah, man, I guess the burning question with all the lames is the supply that Richard holds, right? So, I mean, I'm curious, during your initial due diligence, like, what was it?
Might not be Richard. I don't think it's Richard.
Okay. Well, all right. The big supply that's held by somebody. what was it that made you either disregard that or hold it in a place where you thought that as like a positive for the game theory that developed in there?
Yeah, good question. The way I saw it at the time, at first it doesn't make any sense, right? Number one, you got to really do your due diligence to really be able to wrap your head around why that OA address is critical. And it's primarily because of how, once you really understand hex, and I don't know if RH feigns ignorance or whatever, but this thing is a behemoth. And, people don't understand that. And the reason they don't understand that is because they lack the perspective to understand it. It's not because they don't want to. So what do I even mean? And it's kind of some of the stuff I was explaining earlier. Excuse me. Hex is really like an economic system, right? And it takes some understanding to get that. Now, how is that the case? Well, anybody, right, whether a person or an institution, can step in and say, I got X amount of money that I'm doing nothing with, or I got X amount of money that I need to generate income with for a period of time, Y, right? Whatever question is out there for whatever individual it might be, besides having the ability to generate capital appreciation, the opportunity to generate yield is also there, right? So it's not just a singular aspect that drives people to the table when it comes to hex. And that's one of the most misunderstood aspects of the game when it comes to hex, because people can't see past a few X's, honestly, right? So when you're talking about the crowd in question, right, these are all people with no perspective at all as to where things could go or where they've been, or even an understanding of where they're coming from, right? And I think that that's the biggest danger with being new to the game. A lot of people aren't putting in the legwork that they got to put in to understand hex and that aspect of the OA address, because it's just like anything else out there that's brand new. There is going to be a period of time when things don't make sense because they're brand new. And I've explained this also before. For the longest time, Amazon was just going up, 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 and nobody understood why, because, excuse me, give me a second. Nobody understood why, because they just lost money every year, right? This was the case for like 20 years. Now they're making billions every quarter, period. Whatever they lost is no longer even relevant, right? Over those 20 years. So whoever was buying and buying and buying and buying the stock that whole time, while the stock was actually cheap, because now is when it's expensive, right? They made out like a bandit. And they didn't give a fuck what price they paid. They paid that fucking price, because guess what it costs now? And that's not how people are thinking. And especially if you're a newbie, you're not going to have a fucking clue about anything. You're just new. You're just going to go off whatever you hear some other fool say. And that's the danger in the influencer aspect of this game. You don't need it, especially if you're new. You need to understand that this is technology and this is where the world is going, because it has no choice. That's what you need to understand, especially if you're new and you don't know anything. Like, the cost of living is a real problem. And if you're new, I'm sure you understand that at a minimum, if nothing else. So, it's things like that that once you piece all these elements together, and it takes time, it takes perspective. It's not easy. It's definitely not for the layman to do. And that's what's hard. The layman needs to come in and put in work. And 9 out of 10 times, they're not willing to do that. So I don't know if you got anything else, but that's that's really the deal with that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the added benefit. I mean, unless you do the work, you're going to look at it as like a deterrent,
right?
And that's right,
though.
The matter of fact.
Yeah, yeah, but that's 100% correct. And and I think that's the problem. And in fact, I even felt like that for a little while, because I felt like people just wanted me to stream for no reason. Like, bro, there's no reason to stream. You know, at the time, it wasn't like it is now, where I could literally stream 24/7. Like, there's so much shit going on. I can stream about what's going on 24/7, just off of Twitter. You know, I don't even need TV. That's how crazy it is right now. But at the time, there was nothing happening. It wasn't like it is now. But at the end of the day, the question should be, why do you just want to watch a stream? You know, what added benefit is there to you in that? You know, in most cases, there's none. Because that stream from last month or last year or the one that Richard did in 2018 is still valid, and you haven't learned that lesson yet. So it's all these things that once you lay them out, it's a whole different world, you know, and it's not like it's unconquerable because there are people out here that are willing to help. The question is, are you willing to seek it? You know, are you willing to put in the work? And there's been plenty of guys, man, that they've come to me for help, and I've helped. And there's other guys out there helping. Like, but you got to be out here, you know, looking for the alpha. It's not going to come to you. You got to fucking find that shit, you know, because I had to find it when it came to Hex. You know, I had to learn it too. Everybody has to understand so they can connect all these dots. You know, it's a tall order in many respects, especially if you don't have any crypto knowledge. If you come up in here and you have no financial knowledge either, you're at a major disadvantage, unfortunately. It's just the name of the game.
Yeah, man. Respect, my friend.
Same here, brother.
Well, I mean, another thing to get back to the question of like why one entity, or not even one, just maybe multiple entities, whoever the heck it is, controls all the tokens.
Right.
Hex is specifically benefiting from that ownership of the OAs through the staking mechanism, in which the more people that stake, the less the APR is.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so if you look at the overall market right now of even 10% of people staking, and yet there's only 11% of the supply available to the public, that would essentially mean that there's 98% of people staking right now, which would in turn lower the interest rate to around 3.6, maybe 4% APY if everyone was to remain staked as it is right now, if the entity did not stake at all. Now, the other benefit, too, is this is a benevolent being, entity, whoever it may be, that has not sold.
Right.
That is massive to price appreciation, because whales can do big things to the price. Push it up and push it down. But the reason that whales typically last and they can do it is because they got long time frames in their head most of the time. So they're okay with doing like a 5-10 year stake because they already got the millions in the bank.
Yeah. What?
Right?
Yeah. One thing that's go ahead.
We all get that, but I'm just like, just because of all the articles that have come out lately. I mean, it's just that's the biggest question on people's minds, and what you're hearing from all the so-called influencers and everyone else is the supply issue.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They're not going to understand it at all, man. You know, these are people that, okay, so let's talk about the influencer shit, right? Because I personally have a major problem with the community and how they engage these paid opposition, honestly, is what they are, right? These people are paid opposition. They're not there to have a debate. They're not. And people think that they are. You know, it's the height of stupidity to think that these people are there to add any value to your life or society in any which way when they clearly...
Yeah, there's no argument. There's no argument you could place before them, no matter how logically correct it is and dead balls right you are. There's nothing you can say that's going to win them over, which is the stupidest thing ever that I've ever said. You're never going to win them over. They're not there to be won over. They're there to create static, oppose, and muddy the waters, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah, man, that's literally it. I mean, there is no two ways to slice that cookie. So, you know, if people don't begin to understand that, Hex is going to continue to get suppressed because these people are there for that. All you can literally do is post some fact in their stupid ass tweet and keep it moving, but you're helping them at the same time by doing that. You know, the facts are over here. they're just relaying misinformation. At the end of the day, what value are their viewers or followers or whatever you want to call them actually getting? Very little, because ultimately they're getting wrecked once, twice, who knows how many times a year, right? That's what's actually happening. That's not like a conversation. Like, that's what we know is happening, and we can see it, right? So why don't people focus on that aspect of the game? That's what I don't understand. Because at the end of the day, these people, there's nobody to stop them. It's just you. So if you're not going to stop, why will they? I mean, there's some dude on Twitter that literally scammed everybody in his community or whatever you want to call it the other day. And it's, them clowns are still there. How do you stop that? You don't. They have to stop it. But if they don't care that they're getting scammed, what can you do? Point it out and keep it moving. You literally can't do anything else, right? And I think that's what's hard, because the right information is not prevalent in the space. And people do not understand that. People in the community do not understand that. They definitely don't respect that fact, because they want it to be whatever they want it to be because of their own agenda. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. You see it every damn day, especially with all the sacrifices and all that shit. Everybody got their own agenda. They're not about real crypto, because this shit is just getting started. Ain't no plants to flag. Ain't no flags to plant yet. This shit is just getting started. What flag you planting? Ain't no territories, man. Like, you got to really think about what you're doing. And ultimately, people don't relate reality with themselves. And that's a sad fact, because it's true. I know I didn't, right? You got to learn to do that. That shit is called growing up. And that's real talk. Like, that's what that shit is called. Excuse me.
Yeah, Wells, I got one for you.
Shoot, brother.
So I think that this is a question that a lot of it's obviously going to be targeted at the newcomers, and because this is probably a question that a lot of people are going to have, and you got to be around a while before this finally clicks. So hopefully this question will help out. So can you explain how the 3.69 inflation rate is dynamic, and also how that inflation rate translates to the advertised 38% yield?
Great question, man. And let me answer that, because that's a really great question. So the 3.69% is dynamic specifically because it is based upon how many people are actually staked in the system. Therefore, if, like ATX was explaining a little while ago, we only have, 9.5% of the hex staked. And then I think 350 billion or 250 billion was sacrificed. I can't even remember the number anymore. I think it was 350. Whatever the number was, right? That's a whole chunk of hex that's never, ever going to hit the market. Period. Never going to hit it. That's probably, what's that? We got 9.5 plus, let's say 30% of the supply, 35%, I think is the estimate I came up with a long time ago. So that's 35 plus 9.5%. Let's just call it around 45%, right? That means 45% of the supply is locked up, right? Now, 30% of that supply is never going to be seen again, because we already have evidence of how the OA, whoever controls that entity, right? We already understand how they operate. And that is something that I wanted to bring up earlier when ATX was talking. At the beginning, we didn't really have as much evidence as we do now, right? Now we got all the evidence we want to speak nothing but facts and truth to what exactly the OA does, the benefits of the OA. You know, at that point, we didn't have any of that. We had to wait and see. You know, big payday had to roll around. All of these things had to happen. And fortunately for us, you know, we were smart enough to understand that there was no risk at that point. Because a lot of people, even though all the activity on the blockchain shows to the contrary, they don't have a clue about what's going on, why it's going on, how it's going on, or any of that, right? People are really, really clueless as to the system and how it works, right? So I just explained how 40% of the supply is essentially gone, right? It's just not coming back. Or at least for now, right? We know 30% is gone and not coming back, period. So that means that took out of everything in the system, right? Out of all the capacity that exists in the system, you can only stake max 70% of the coins that exist. That's what that means, right? That's how the system becomes dynamic. So what that means is we could never reach 3.69%. We could never hit that level of inflation. That's what that means. So in essence, the system as it stands now is high yield already compared to everything else that exists out there, legacy finance included. Because the lowest it can go is like 5.5%, 6%, or some crazy shit like that. It's not even high. It's really, really low, right? And that, I mean, that's a fact. You know, this is all evidentiary fact. This is not an opinion. And, you know, you don't hear a lot of people talking about these things. Like, you don't really hear these so-called influencers talking about that when it comes to Hex, right? But those are all facts when it comes to Hex, period, right? So what do we do with that information? How does that add value? Hold on, guys. All right. So if we know the inflation can't go lower than X, and we're in now and getting 38, 40%, that means our our downside is, in terms of yield, right? Our downside in terms of yield is like 35% or something like that, right? Something crazy. And that's important to understand, because if this thing ends up becoming what I think it could be, which is bigger than I could even imagine, you know, what's to say that there isn't something out there that's going to cause these health insurance companies, these property and casualty insurers, these financial insurers, these reinsurers, all these different entities that need yield to live, to survive, to function, that are now in the red after being long duration all the way through 2020 and are now eating crow because they got to hold that paper to maturity because they're now all in the red. I mean, this is a reality. And yeah, they're getting their 5%, sure, or 4%, or whatever the case is. But guess what? They took some major losses in the transition of obtaining that 5% yield that ultimately it became. It wasn't that for the longest time. And that's important to understand, right? Like, so that's an elevated understanding of what can make Hex become a thing. But what happens if, as we're seeing, the powers that be feel threatened and they attack it? Like, what's to stop? The only thing that could stop people from engaging is, like I've always said, psychological warfare, right? PsyOps. Because just like they've stopped people in India and China and all those respective jurisdictions from engaging in crypto for the longest time, over here is different, right? They can't really stop us. It's not like they got to really shut the internet down. We don't got this whole firewall situation like they got in China. So it's a whole different scenario in the U.S. You know, in the U.S., they ultimately, or in the West in general, they got to really shut the internet down. You know, that's not a lie. Like, that's what they have to do. So, you know, there are a lot of positive aspects to crypto that people just undermine and don't respect because they're thinking about their thing, right? Hex can't be shut off. You know, we're literally watching the destruction of the financial system happen before our very eyes in a selective fashion. It's not like it's even institutions that are failing. They're picking who the fuck they're going to choose to fail. I don't know if people understand that, but that's literally what's happening. You know, that's critical information if you didn't have it. So, you know, there's a reason that on Craigslist now, they got that I will, you know, take crypto thing. It's becoming relevant, whether you want it to or not. So are you properly positioned or are you just here fucking around trying to look cool? It's the internet. You really don't know. Pro tip.
I got an interesting metaphor for like why crypto is so great.
Let's hear it.
Okay, y'all know how like we've been seeing these commercials our entire lives, and it's like, oh, here's like a poor starving child, donate some money to like help it, and then like 10 years down the road we hear about, hey, like, you know, out of every $10 million, like there's like $50 worth of food that actually makes it there. Like, love that.
Oh, right. That's a good. Yeah, that's a good. You know, that's a good point.
Yeah, and just immediately like just send him directly, whatever network it is, Bitcoin. You want to wait 45 minutes, whatever, and then that kid immediately has the 50 cents or $10 or $50 you wanted to send him so he could eat, and immediately has it right then and there. And there's no middleman.
Right.
Crazy, right?
None. Yeah, none. A charity could actually function as one. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? The one main thing that came to mind for me was the fact that, you know, this really gives people options to do whatever they want, right? And again, you know, that's really lost on people, just the flexibility that a yield generating system or inflation generating system such as Hex provides. You know, Hex is not just a coin that you buy. You can buy any fucking coin. Right? Like, it's important to remember that. So right now, 9.5%, you have people attaining 39% yield, right? On average. That's the average. If you're staked out, right, you're going to make more than that. If you're looking at these 3-year stakes or at these stakes that are rolling out, ending at max duration, up to present date, these are 50% APRs that we're seeing coming out on these stakes, 51, 52%. That's the yield that's being generated in 3 years. And of course, it includes big payday. So let's take our big payday, right? Let's say that's an additional 10% per year. We're still talking 40% per year APR. That's insane, people. But you're making that in 3 years.
By the way.
Yeah, in hex terms, exactly, which is variable, which is exactly what's gangster, because you're not getting fiat notes. You're getting real money. And when those fiat notes collapse, you're going to be glad you had that real money. Because everybody else that's playing with that real money understands what that money is. You know, they're not out here just, if they're smart anyway, throwing it away, right? So those are things that are very critical to really have your head wrapped around. So if X is just paying is paying 40, 50%, and 9.5% of the Hex is staked, right? And we can't really go lower than, my guesstimate really is, we're never going to see lower than 10%. That's my guesstimate. Unless it really gets crazy and there really is nothing else out there because people really want dominion of their yield or inflation generation, Because that's also another thing, right? Everything else that's out there is middleman based, literally. I don't know of anything that isn't middleman based, that isn't derived from hex. Don't know it. So, you know, that's all stuff that's important. All these items are important, and I mean, there's so many things to keep account for. It's a lot, you know. It's a lot. If you're new to this stuff, you got to write it down because it's really a lot of points. You know, it took me years to learn all this stuff. This stuff is not easy to just dig into and wrap your head around. As much as we would wish it was, you know, it's just not. We got to really be cognizant of the fact that some of this stuff can be complicated for a person. You know, they might not understand, you know, inflation and why it's tearing their pocket up. You know, they might need, you know, an explanation like the pie, like the one I gave earlier. Or they might need something else. You know, you got to really be able to bend into people's ability to see and understand things. This is why questions are important. I remember when I was in college, I was an adult already. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't there like the other kids just fucking off. So I was one of the few people asking questions. I know if I was younger, I wasn't going to be doing that. But I didn't understand when I was younger what I understood after, you know, being in college at that point. Like, it gave me perspective. So questions are important. Don't be afraid to ask. Let's see. I think somebody.
Yeah, man. I've been around here for like 2.5 years, and you know all the dumbass questions I've had. You know, don't be scared to ask something. Like, you know, like it is Twitter. You know, people are toxic as hell, but like we don't learn it with each other. You know, like there ain't no college course you can really go take on what this dude's telling you. You know. Like,
right, yeah, you got to verify
what you're bringing to the table, man.
Yeah, but you still need to, you know, check what's being told, you know, and I think that's what's very, very lost on people. You know, it's so because you're sold a bill of goods with this influencer shit and what they've done and their achievements, and yeah, you know, that's all cool and well, but what about you? How are you gonna benefit from what that person has done for themselves? You know, the only real benefit you can derive from that is what you can learn. There's really nothing else because they're not going to give you no money. What are they going to do? Tell you what thing to buy? Like, that's not really smart because you don't think like they do. You don't have the same issues that they have, if they even have any, right? So all these things are critical to wrap your head around when we're talking about why one thing versus another. You know, why stock versus crypto? You know, I try to tell people that work about crypto all the time, you know, and I point out to them how, like, they see how nobody really knows anything. And then I say something specific and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because what they're hearing elsewhere, it just doesn't. Right. And then these are people that are not used to doing stuff like we are. So they're, you know, these are motherfuckers that work in finance. Like, they're typically just used to doing the bare minimum. That's why they're there in the first place. A lot of people in whatever industry they're in are just used to getting by on the bare minimum because that's what gets you from A to B in today's society. Shutting the fuck up and doing the bare minimum. That's what does it. We see it every day. That's why there's this quote that goes, men die of quiet desperation or some shit like that. Because people will sit there and take on pain and live a miserable life instead of doing what they really want to do. Think about that. I mean, here we have this thing that's providing you an out. And people still want a friend on it. Instead of just taking a little bit of time to try to see what it's really about. It's the craziest thing. Next person, next speaker.
Is that me, Prospector?
Yeah, go ahead, brother. Sorry.
Hey, how you doing, man? Big fan. I got a couple questions. As seen as the changing for the law that you've been talking about, is there, how likely would it be to create a lobbying group, at least as, because I follow some of the stuff that Identity Block has been talking about, and he talks about how, he actually says Michael Saylor and FTX were actually been working in the background lobbying to politicians to be able to get, Sam Bankman-Fried was over there trying to make FTX become the only centralized exchange to be allowed to operate in the U.S. While you have Michael Saylor over there trying to make Bitcoin, the only crypto that's legal.
Right.
So my question is, how would you, be making our own lobby group, as in, because I'm not just saying for hexicans, but yes, on that, because we do need to defend ourselves in
I know what you mean.
aspect. So I mean, how likely is that possible? And would you lend a hand? And as in just guidance, not in like actual like.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You're not a lawyer, but something like that. So that's my question right there.
Yeah, appreciate it, brother. Good question. Because the interesting thing about it is, even the lawyers aren't lawyers, right? They don't really understand the system that they're operating in. They're just doing what the protocol is. We're doing what we always do, type of thing, right? That's what they're doing. Because a judge that they know has done ABC before, they're going to expect them to do ABC again, especially if the circumstances are the same, if the evidence is similar, and all these things, right? Now, again, we're talking about individuals, right? Never mind a system, because a system is comprised of individuals. And I think that it's important we understand that when we're out here asking these types of questions and, these legal type questions where, of course, I'm not a lawyer, but we're talking about a fraudulent system, hands down. That's first and foremost what's important to understand. The monetary system that we're talking about is fraudulent. It's based upon fraud. You don't know that you don't have to participate in it. Therefore, you're being defrauded into participating in it. I don't know if you understand that as an individual, but everybody that's listening to the spaces right now should understand that. That's basic. If you don't know that you have an option, then you're being defrauded. And the presumption is that you don't have an option. That's why the term legal tender exists. But if you read the Constitution, it's a whole nother ballgame. And that's why they're so hell-bent on getting rid of that element from even being a reference point, even though that's not even it either. And that's what's even... Like, once you get to a certain level of education, you start to realize that this notion of lobbying and all that, all you're doing is playing into their hands. So that doesn't actually provide a route that's valuable or with solution. All you're doing is playing their game at that point. So unless you're trying to play their game, there's no reason to really get involved in their nonsense. And that's ultimately what it boils down to. Hope that makes sense.
It does. That's an opinion that I've heard from. He's not an influencer, but he does a lot of crypto news, and he's a Bitcoin maxi. His name is Bitcoin King, but they actually try to bring out all the news of the crypto area, right. And he has a military background. He was a Navy guy, and he talks about he's like screw all this. We don't need to. We need to remove all these bills that they passed. We need to remove how Bitcoin was classified as a property, right. And then remove. So yeah, basically what you just said. Yeah, that's another opinion that I heard. Yeah. That we just need to just don't play with their system.
Correct. That's the correct answer. I've been saying that one for a while, but it's difficult for people to wrap their head around exactly how. And I get that, right? Because you have to actually understand another level of what the scam actually is to be able to wrap your head around that. And it's a complicated scam. So don't get me twisted thinking that it's easy. It's really not. It's very, very complicated. And the sad thing is that they use religion as the base for the entire scam. So when people like me are giving you facts, I can't really give you everything because you're going to get offended if you're religious. Facts. But the religion is where the scam all starts. All religions. So.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'll get back down, and just want to say shout out to Westcott, ATX. You know, always enjoy watching y'all talk. And can somebody get me some Lashinman coins?
Don't do it. Don't do it.
All right, have a good one, man. I'll be listening in the background. Thank you.
Peace, bro. Yo, I'm not traveling to another dimension, I promise. Oh my God. I can't with y'all, bro.
Come on, man. You can't say that religion thing and then not say anything.
Yeah, that shit was funny, bro. Oh my God. That was too much. Oh man. All right. I don't know if anybody else got any questions, but if y'all do, let's have them. Otherwise, I'm gonna get the cooking. Homie gotta eat. So let's get him if you got him.
Come on, man. You can't drop that religious bit and then just walk away from that.
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah, I can. Everybody ain't ready for that, bro. Everybody ain't ready for that. Promise you that one. Everybody ain't ready for that. Let's fix the money first, then we'll worry about the next scam. One scam at a time. You know what I'm saying? One scam at a time. And once people can discover that that's part of the scam, then we can work our way towards that. But until then, you know, that's a hard one to swallow for most people. Because a lot of people ain't trying to hear that shit, you know, at all.
We should all become tax-free, is what you're trying to say.
We should all become what?
Tax-free at this point. And entities.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We all already are. And that religious system is predicated on that. They're the ones that created all of this shit.
Right.
All of this entity, corporation, a corporation having a soul comes from religion. You know, you got to read I think it's called Ecclesiastes or some shit. That's what you got to read. That's where that stuff is at. So it gets deep. You know, a lot of people they're not ready for that level of information. So, you know, I don't get too in the weeds with that kind of stuff. You know, let's take it one step at a time. You know, a lot of people think that social media is good still. You know, how do you even, you know, like, how do you not smack somebody that's that dumb? I don't know. You know, I don't know. But you got to, like, just keep pushing a little bit at a time. And that's all we can do, you know, until people really see what social media is and what it's for. You know, they're not going to know. And there's just going to be another one in the bunch, unfortunately. So.
Right on.
That's how that goes, man.
All right.
All right, brother. Thanks for the question. I guess nobody else has any questions. I've been asking about that for a while, and nobody else is really stepping up. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for joining me tonight on a Sunday evening. I appreciate you guys with your questions, the ones that sent them in. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys have any questions you want to ask in the background, don't be shy. Again, it's about providing people with the right information. That's why I don't take shortcuts. I don't do 20-minute anything. There's no value in that. If we're going to start a new world, it better be new all the way through. Because that bullshit you trying to bring up in here ain't going to fly. And that's how we going to ride or die. Hex, PULSECHAIN, PulseX, nothing else, baby. Pulse Nation, shout out to you guys. Shout out to everybody who's coming up with a request. Why are you over here all late, bro? I'm wrapping up, man. Damn it. Let me check your profile. Let's see. All right, you got down here, though. We'll give you a shot. Go ahead, brother. You can speak. Oh, wait. No, not yet. I think now you can. Yeah, now you can speak. Oscar Hex Addict. You can speak now, sir, or forever hold your peace. All right, brother. We out.
Right? The reality is that I want to be rich as fuck. There's only one way to be rich as fuck. That's by sitting on your ass the longest. Yep. That's it. Yep. That's the secret. The Godwell told you. Richard done told you. I done told you. Kareem done told you. Maddie done told you. Everybody done told you. Everybody done told you. Shit, motherfuckers still acting like they don't know. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
100% safe. There's plenty of games left.
Valiant done told you. Yo, everybody said it. I mean, hey, you know what it is, man? Everybody done told you. Y'all's deep. Everybody. My God. Hexicans, bro. Everybody. Australians, man. Everybody gets me. Yo, when is the total? Dollar